The masked attacker lunged at the royal guardsman with a knife, confident that he would make history. The blade glinted in the sun as he sliced through the crowd, making his way to a flawlessly straight figure in a red uniform. Tourists froze, their phones hovering in the air. One more second and blood would splatter on the ancient stones in front of Buckingham Palace. But a moment later, the guard pulled back, and what happened next left the entire crowd in stunned silence. A movement so quick that it was almost unnoticed. The white glove flashed, and instead of crashing into the body, the knife stopped in an iron grip. The attacker did not even have time to realize what had happened. The guardsman's eyes bored into him through his impeccable straightened face. Not a step back. No fear. Only cold, deadly confidence. And then everything exploded. Screams, panic, guards rushing to the scene. The attacker turned and ran. But he could not escape. Because he didn't just attack a man in a ceremonial uniform. He challenged the soldier. When he stepped forward, people did not realize what was happening. For the crowds of tourists, it was just another day in front of Buckingham Palace. Red uniforms, tall bear hats, unwavering figures on guard. Everything was as usual. But not for him. He has come to change the course of history. A man in a black jacket slipped between the groups of tourists, his eyes hidden behind tinted glasses. His hand in his pocket clutched a cold hilt. The plan was simple, to break through with lightning speed, strike, and disappear into the chaos. The cameras would capture it. The news would explode with headlines. He would be the one who proved that the system was not unbreakable. One move, and he will write his name in history. A sharp breath. Adrenaline hits his temples. He grabbed the knife. 1 step. 2. 3. A slice of air, a metallic glint in the sun. Tourists screamed, recoiled, and someone dropped their phone. A woman in a blue coat put her hands over her mouth. The man in the suit pulled his wife back. But he didn't pay attention. His eyes were fixed on only one figure. To the guardsman. Standing like a statue. Unshakable. Not even moving. Perfectly ironed uniform. White belt. A rifle in his hands. One more moment and the knife will enter the red fabric. But something went wrong. The guardsman moved with lightning speed. The white glove flashed in the air. The polished butt of the rifle jerked to the side. A blow. The attacker's hand twisted in an unnatural position. Pain exploded up his forearm, and the knife tore itself from his fingers and rolled along the stone sidewalk. The man clenched his jaws. It was impossible. He had practiced this move hundreds of times. It was supposed to end in one precise blow. But now he was standing in front of the guardsman, and he was not backing down. Their eyes met. Where the attacker had expected to see fear or at least some shock, there was only one thing, cold confidence. And then he realized he had made a huge mistake. One more second and the guards would throw him to the ground. His name would be forgotten before he could say a word. Run. A sharp jerk backwards. He bumped into a tourist's shoulder, and the woman screamed. He rushed through the crowd, clinging to other people's jackets, pushing people away. Behind him was an explosion of shouts. Someone was shouting guards. Someone had already dialed the police. But the guard did not move. He just looked at the attacker. Calm, cold, deadly. The chase had just begun. The alarm went off like a shot. The guards were already rushing forward, their radios wheezing with commands. Several tourists were running away, while others hadn't yet realized what was happening. Some pulled the children back, while others just stood there, paralyzed with horror. But the attacker did not stop. His feet slipped on the stone slabs. His heart was pounding in his chest. Only forward, only away from here. The guard remained in place. He did not run. He did not pursue. But the look. This look did not let him go. And that's what made his heart race at breakneck speed. The attacker dashed to the left, rushed past the gate, and burst into the wide square in front of Buckingham Palace. The sun was hitting his eyes, making his escape even more difficult. Behind him, he heard the shouts of guards, the clang of metal, and orders. He planned everything to the second. He studied every point, every potential escape route. But he hadn't taken into account one thing. Guardsmen don't just stand there. They see everything. Even before the attacker stepped onto the square, one of them already knew where he was going to run. That is why when he turned sharply into a side alley, they were already waiting for him. A strong blow to the chest knocked him down. Before he could realize what had happened, someone with an iron grip grabbed him by the collar and pushed him against the wall. Dark eyes stared at him. It was the same guard. He was supposed to stand still. He shouldn't have even reacted. But here he was. Without moving his gaze, he held his attacker tightly, and his white glove squeezed his disarmed hand so that his fingers barely felt blood circulation. You've already lost. The voice is calm. Even. And that was the worst part. No. No. The attacker pulled out with the last of his strength, making a sharp shoulder movement, and slipped out of his grip. Pain in my temples, heart exploding in my chest, ragged breathing. There's still a chance. You can still get out of this alive. A step. The guard did not rush after him. He just took one step forward. And that was enough. The attacker felt the cold chill on his body. The guard did not draw his weapon. He did not raise his hands. He just looked. He looked as if he already knew how it would end. And the attacker suddenly realized a terrible truth. He was not the hunter. He was the prey. The voices of the guards were getting closer. The attacker started running again, barely making out the road. But now his movements were chaotic. His plan was falling apart. He was not only being pursued by the soldiers, he was being pursued by fear. Ahead was a dead end. Behind him was not just a guard. Behind him was inevitability. A dead end. The attacker leaned against a stone wall. Behind him were the sounds of heavy footsteps, the voices of the approaching guards. To the left and right are narrow alleys that lead nowhere. He was stuck. His heart was pounding. His ribs were tight, as if there was no air left in his lungs. He clenched his fists, tensing every muscle. There was still a chance. He could still fight. But then he saw him. The guard. The one who was supposed to stay put. The one he had thought was just a parade soldier. He was standing a few steps away, motionless, as if carved out of stone. But that was exactly what made him more terrifying than all the others. The guards were shouting orders, commands were pouring out of their radios. And he just stood there. No rush. No anger. Only a look that made me want to step back. But there was only a blank wall behind him. The attacker was frantically looking for a way out. Only one way out. His fingers clutched the second knife hidden in his inside pocket. His last chance. He took a deep breath. It was you or them. A sharp jerk forward. The blade is pointed at the guardsman's throat. Close. Even closer. And suddenly, a blow. Not a knife. Not a fist. A rifle butt. He did not even have time to realize what had happened. A painful blow to the wrist, and the second knife flew to the side, clinking against a stone. A sharp movement of the shoulder, and he himself was slammed into the wall. The guardsman was now standing almost close to him. The attacker clenched his teeth, gathered the rest of his strength, and tried to break free again. But it was no use. His arm was pinned down, his shoulder was blocked, and it was impossible to move. The guards were already running up. He would not have time to do anything. It was over. It's over. One word. Calm. Without emotion. And that's what broke him completely. The fierce gaze turned into emptiness. His fingers, which had been trying to struggle a second ago, hung powerlessly. The guards ran over. His arms were twisted. His face was pressed into the cold stone. He was defeated. The guardsman just straightened up, straightened his white glove, and took a step back. He was perfectly straight again, as if nothing had happened, as if it was just another day. But the attacker knew. He would never forget that look. The look of someone who was always on guard. The interrogation room was sterile and cold. A steel tabletop, gray walls, one dim lantern that cast harsh shadows on the face. The attacker sat with his head down. His hands were handcuffed, the scratches on his skin still burning from the fight. The door behind him closed, and he heard someone slowly move closer. It was him, a guard. The attacker tensed. It was just a soldier, right? Just part of the parade? He was trained to stand still and not react, right? But he reacted. And now the attacker could not get rid of this feeling. He was sure that he would not lose, that the guardsmen were just puppets in uniform. But he was wrong. And now he was facing not just a man in a red uniform. A soldier was standing in front of him. The silence was pressing, not allowing him to breathe in fully. The guard did not say a word. He just looked. The attacker lasted 3 seconds. 4. 5. What do you want? He managed to get out. The guardsman tilted his head slightly. Understanding. What? You didn't attack the symbol. You attacked me. The voice is calm, almost indifferent. And I wonder what you saw in that last moment. The attacker opened his mouth, but said nothing. Because he knew. In that second, when the second knife flew to the side, when the guardsman pushed him against the wall, he saw fear. Not in his eyes. His own. The guard saw it. He knew it. He wasn't afraid. Not for a second. And that was more terrifying than any weapon. You don't understand what you're protecting, the attacker wheezed. The guard finally moved. He slowly put his hand on the table, pressing his fingertips to the metal. Protection is not about understanding. Defense is a duty. The assailant gritted his teeth, anger flaring. Fool. No. And here, for the first time, a shadow of regret appeared in the guardsman's voice. I am a soldier, and you just wanted to prove something. Yeah, but your attempt didn't change anything. Heavy footsteps outside the door. Detectives. Game over. The guard straightened, stepping back. And tomorrow I will be back at my post. The last blow. The door opened. The attacker was lifted from his seat, but he did not resist, because the guard told him the truth. His name will not go down in history. His plan did not break the system. Tomorrow, when the sun rises again over London, the Guardian will be standing where he always has. Unbreakable. Because that's what real soldiers are like. The morning London was the same as always. The sun was slowly rising over Buckingham Palace, gilding the ancient stones and perfectly manicured lawns. The crowd gathered again in the square in front of the gates. Tourists were smiling, taking pictures, joking, posing in front of the guards, trying to make them laugh or at least move. It seemed as if nothing had happened yesterday. But there was one man in that crowd who knew more. He was there when the knife flashed. He saw how everything exploded into screams and chaos. He saw how the same unruffled guard reacted with lightning speed, stopping the attack. And now he was standing there, in his place, just like he always did. His bearskin hat was sitting upright. His uniform was immaculate. A white glove clutched his rifle, which shone in the morning sun, as if nothing had happened, as if he had never moved. But whoever was watching him now knew the truth. The guardsman was not just a part of the parade, not just a symbol. He was a soldier. His eyes, hidden beneath the shadow of his hat, saw more than anyone could have imagined. His reflexes were sharpened by years of training. And when the moment of truth came, when everyone thought he would be defenseless, he stopped the threat without even faltering. Somewhere in a gray, cold cell, the attacker sat staring at the wall. He was no longer dangerous. He did not become a symbol of the struggle. His name did not appear in the headlines. Everything went on as usual. Nothing had changed. And this is what destroyed him the most. Because he thought he could shake the system. He thought he would show weakness. But he only proved the opposite. Guardsmen do not just stand still. They see. They hear. And when the moment comes, they act. In the crowd, a woman pushed her husband with her elbow and pointed at the guardsman. He doesn't even blink, she whispered. They never move. The man nodded, pulling out his phone for a photo. But the one who saw the truth knew more. These men don't just stand still. They stand because they are always ready to act. They stand because someone has to stand. Because a true defender never falls. He stands. Always. If this story has made you think about what service and honor really mean, let us know what you think about this case in the comments. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss even more incredible stories about those who stand guard.